This Is Where We Live. I'm Lucy NALPATHANCHIL. Today we're profiling Brazilian jazz guitarist Joe Carter. He's also the director of Sacred Heart University's music program. You're hearing us now on the radio. We're also on Facebook Live, too. Now, Joe, before the break, we heard how you fell in love with Brazilian jazz, and you heard it, you came back, and you immediately tried to find some Brazilian musicians to learn from. So now, years later, you're in Connecticut. How do you find people to collaborate with?
Well, that's a good question. I just try to hear who's doing what. And if I hear someone like next guest on the show and I hear that she's great and she swings and she has balanzo, then I ask her if she wants to do something together, and that's how things start.
Now, one of your collaborators is sitting right next to you. She's vocalist and pianist Isabella Mendes. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So you're a native of Brazil?
I am.
So tell us how you ended up here in Connecticut.
My stepfather came to study at Yale University. He came to do his postdoctoral fellowship, and the whole family moved. Me, myself, my parents, and my two older sisters.
So you were in your teens when you came here?
Yeah, I was around 15.
And we heard that as a child, Joe started playing. What about you? When did you find music?
So, according to my mom, who is listening right now, hi Mom, the first word I said was piano because I always loved playing the piano. Every single piano I saw, either like a toy store or in like the mall, and malls in Brazil, we have a lot of pianos there. And I was always fascinated by the instrument, so I was classically trained since I was 6 years old. And then it wasn't until I moved to the United States in 1999 that I began my jazz studies and my Brazilian music studies.
That's interesting. So you were trained classically, but now you perform Brazilian music. But what was that journey like for you? Because then you were now in the States. And
right.
Did you feel, when I think of Brazil, I think of, music plays such a part of that culture. But now that you're here,
Yeah.
How did you stay connected to those roots?
Oh, absolutely. Because my family was here and I grew up listening to not only classical music, but I grew up listening to a lot of Chico Buarque, a lot of Antônio Carlos Jobim, and my mother always had Brazilian music playing around the house. So I always grew up with that influence, but I didn't begin the studies until I moved here until I was 15. Mm-hmm. I think I was a little older to really understand the beauty of Brazilian music. Yeah.
And I understand, besides being a professional musician,
Mm-hmm.
you are a trained engineer.
I am. Yes, I went to Worcester Polytechnic Institute, WPI, for civil and structural engineering. And I had a minor in music, and I never stopped my music studies on the side.
And what did your parents think that now that you're, doing this professionally?
Oh, I think they're happy. Yeah, they really, I'm sure they appreciate both my right side of the brain and left side of the brain being used at the moment. Yeah, they enjoy listening to music. As I said, my mom's listening to the radio right now.
But pursuing music is hard, so it's good to have a profession to lean back on.
Yes.
And how did you find Joe?
So I think we met, I went to see a concert.
You were stalking me.
I was. I heard that there's this great Brazilian guitarist in Connecticut, so I sought him out. Like you said, like when you hear that people are playing in the area and they're playing the music that you want to share, you seek them out. And I was with my good friend, also a Colombian guitarist, actually, Hernan Yepes, and I went to see was it in Stratford, a church in Stratford?
Yeah, it was a concert with Ali Ryerson, the flute player, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I remember you coming up after the concert and we chatted for a while. We said something like, we should get together.
Yes.
And we did.
And we did.
Right.
Yes.
Well, let's hear you perform. Again, this is Joe Carter and Isabella Mendes. Before you begin, tell us about the song.
Oh, so this song is called Brigas Nunca Mais, which means no more fights. And it's by Antônio Carlos Jobim, whose birthday is coming up, actually.
Coming up in this month.
This month, his 90th birthday, if he were to be alive, January 25th.
All right, let's hear it.
Chegou, sorriu, venceu, depois chorou, então fui eu quem consolou sua tristeza na certeza de que o amor tem dessas fases.
NALPATHANCHIL. That's Isabella Mendes and Joe Carter. Today we're exploring Brazilian jazz. They perform together, often along the southern part of our state. You mentioned you've been collaborating for some time. Tell me about that. Trios, quartets, and how do you bring other people into your world?
So for me, the duo was always best, but we sometimes play in trio, quartet, depending on the venue. We do concerts where sometimes we're able to have a 5-piece group, sometimes or 4 or 3-piece group. So we do it all. I mean, we played in the Hartford area twice in a row for the Samba Fest that's put on every year, and that's usually a quintet.
Correct.
But, you know, it's all different combinations.
You know, we're also on Facebook Live, and it's great to watch when you hear a vocalist singing. I'm curious, what are you thinking about as you're singing that song?
Mostly the music and the lyrics. I think when you really feel what the lyrics are talking about, you're able to portray the song a little bit more. So I was thinking about the words, and this song that we sang previously was Brigas Nunca Mais, which means no more fighting. So it's a love song about no more fighting. So I was envisioning that whole story, no fight, you know.
And you write your own songs as well.
I do, yes.
And tell me about that process.
So writing for me has always come very naturally. I mean, since I was younger, when I started playing the piano, I always doodled on piano, and then I remember my mother asked, "Oh, what's that song that you're playing?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. I'm just coming up with the song right now, with the melody." So I began writing instrumental music, just compositions, and again, when I became a teenager, I began writing more lyrics, both in English and in Portuguese. Yeah.
And one of your newest projects, the Bossa Nova project?
Yes, the Bossa Nova project. So that's a very new project, is a new idea that I'm coming up with, and it was inspired by what Joe was talking about in the first segment of the show, about the idea of Bossa Nova. So Bossa Nova came about in the late 50s and early 60s in Brazil, and it was one of the most happiest, wonderful times for Brazil, economically, musically, social-wise. It was just a very really wonderful era at that time, and I would love to bring that idea back. And the one thing that I noticed with the Bossa Nova at the time is that there wasn't necessarily a band. It was more about musicians coming together in someone's house and making beautiful music. And one thing that always fascinated me about Bossa Nova is that it's a very unifying sound. It came from samba, which was the music from the slaves and Africans that came to Brazil, and also the influence from our colonizers from Portugal and Europe, and brought those things together, and that created the Bossa Nova with the classical influence and with the jazz influence and with the African and native Brazilian influence. And bringing that back, I think, would be very important right now.
When you've played out, have you talked to people in the audience who might come up to you later and say, you know, they didn't know anything about samba or bossa nova until they've heard your music and have just been drawn to it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people that hear it for the first time, one of the most common comments that I hear is that they find it very pleasant to listen to. It's a feel-good type of music.
And we always seem to get, when we do concerts, we always have children coming up towards the stage and dancing. And that's when we know it's happening, when we see the kids dancing.
That's true, yes.
And is that the difference when we think of traditional jazz, people are sitting in the chair just listening and watching the musicians, but with Brazilian jazz, people are more inclined to want to move?
Yeah, I think so. I think Brazilian jazz really touches something that traditional jazz doesn't all the time. Traditional jazz can be very esoteric sometimes, where Brazilian jazz seems to touch something in people's souls, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell us what you have learned from each other.
Oh my goodness. I have learned so much from Joe Carter.
That's a tough one.
That is a tough one.
I mean, I think we both have learned from one another, and about the music, I think we've both shared what we each know about the music.
Yeah, and continue to do so. I mean, every performance that we have, every song that we play at a gig, we look at each other like, whoa, we just did that. That was incredible. So I think the most important thing that Joe and I have is that we listen to each other.
What?
And what?
Well, we're almost out of time, but I think we'd love to hear you perform one last song. Tell us about the song before you begin.
The song is called O Barquinho, and it was written by Roberto Mendes and Ronald Boscoli.
Well, thank you again to Isabella Mendes and Joe Carter for coming on the show today. And let's hear you one more time.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thanks for having us.
Dia de luz, festa de sol, e o barquinho a deslizar no macio azul do mar. Tudo é verão, o amor se faz, e o barquinho pelo mar que desliza sem parar, sem intenção. Nossa canção vai saindo deste mar, e o sol beija o barco e luz. Dias tão azuis, falta do mar desmaia o sol, e o barquinho a deslizar, a vontade de cantar. Céu tão azul, ilhas do sul, e o barquinho o coração deslizando na canção. Tudo isso é paz, tudo isso traz uma calma de verão. E então o barquinho vai, a tardinha cai. Volta do mar, desmaia o sol, e o barquinho a deslizar, e a vontade de cantar. Céu tão azul, ilhas do sul, e o barquinho o coração deslizando na canção. Tudo isso é paz, tudo isso traz uma calma de verão. E então o barquinho vai, a tardinha cai. O barquinho vai, a tardinha cai. O barquinho vai, a tardinha cai.
So lovely. Isabella Mendes and Joe Carter. Just another minute 30. I should have asked you, where can we see you play out? Where's the next performance?
That's right. So our next performance is Saturday on the, I'm reading my paper.
January 21st.
Correct.
So we'll put that up on our website in Middlebury. I believe.
Middlebury Consignment, correct. And then after that, we're a home restaurant that Sunday in Branford, Connecticut. And we're also doing another gig, the debut of the Bossa Nova Project, at Best Video, Thursday, January 26th at 8 p.m.
Well, that's great to know. And again, we'll put that all on our website, WNPR.org/where-we-live. And Joe, can we ask you to play a little bit more as we go into break?
Sure, absolutely.
Again, this is Where We Live. I'm Lucy NALPATHANCHIL. Coming up, we're going to hear from two Connecticut residents who serve as military musicians in the U.S. Armed Forces. And you can watch Joe Carter play.